The Pittsburgh Steelers have several things you could say are wrong with their offense, but they need to find some solutions. One of those solutions is very simple. Get George Pickens the ball. I want to talk about how they can get him the ball with Kenny Pickett to help generate some sort of foundation the offense can build from. We're going to look at some advanced stats, some charts from different sources, and go over all the things that I think could jumpstart the Steelers' offense moving forward. Also, it's Week 7 grades after the loss of the Dolphins, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on the video if you enjoyed. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content where we get time to relieve it. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers your first podcast listen every day. All right, now that all that's been said, let's get to what I was talking about earlier. I really think a simple answer is getting the ball to George Pickens. We saw in the game 6 of 6, 61 yards, I believe it was. But he's been a magnet when the ball to his hands, whenever the ball's been thrown towards him. The Steelers haven't thrown an interception when the ball's been thrown his way yet this year. At least I believe that's the case. I know with Kenny Pickett that's the case. But I wanted to look at some of the charting that we've seen of his routes, of where he was getting the ball in this game, and where Kenny Pickett was going with the ball in this game. Because, again, this still comes down to Kenny Pickett. You're looking for him to develop, but you drafted a George Pickens to give him someone to develop with. Because ultimately, however you feel about Chase Claypool or Deontay Johnson, George Pickens is the guy that's going to be around for most of Kenny Pickett's career if he's successful with the Steelers. And that's the guy you want him building the rapport with. First, I'm going to show you guys, if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, stay tuned. I'll explain it as best I can if you're listening on audio. But I'm going to show you guys the next-gen stats chart for Kenny Pickett's passing. Now, if you're listening and you can't see for yourself on our YouTube channel, there's lots of green dots everywhere. And I think and there's even some down the middle, which if you went back and if you remember some of those charts for Mitch Trubisky and even Kenny Pickett earlier in the season, there weren't as many of those. And so there's a good sign there. But of course, you see the 3 red dots are the 3 interceptions. And again, going back over those, the first one you don't put on him because Chase Claypool was tripped. The second one, you could say, well, he shouldn't have forced it, but at least, he was kind of put in a really rough situation with the down and distance because of procedural penalties by the rest of the offense. But the third one was inexcusable, had to get that ball to the back pylon of the end zone, at least give Deontay Johnson the chances he broke towards an open space and not throw it back into the coverage where the Dolphins were waiting. So you could say that, but you look at those passings, there's some passing downfield, not a whole lot, but there's some there. And, as I said in the immediate game afterwards, the game show afterwards, I was kind of maybe there should be more for him. Now, you're looking at this chart and where it's at. If you're watching this on YouTube, now I'm going to go to the numbers as far as Kenny Pickett, and what he did there. It's pretty obvious when you look at his success here on deep passing, which is 20 or more. He was 1 of 4. He completed 1 pass. He also threw 2 interceptions on the deep left. But in the intermediate range from 10, past 10 yards to up to 20 yards. He was pretty okayish. He was 1 of 2 to his left in that situation, 1 of 3 down the middle for 21 yards, did throw a pick there. But to his right, he was 2 of 3 for 20 yards and a touchdown, of course, that being George Pickens' touchdown reception there. And then he was his most efficient, short of the first down marker. But of course, you want to change that. You want to see more from him than just that. Now, again, the question the challenge I have to Matt Canada, to Mike Tomlin, to everyone in this offense to try to make things going is to find a way to get the ball to George Pickens. And not just get him the ball, not just like wide receiver screen, get him the ball, but I mean, get him a chance to make some plays and beat some guys. And there were some passes he had that. I've switched now to George Pickens' route chart according to Next Gen Stats for the NFL. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can kind of see these are all 6 of his targets. two of them were breaking towards the middle. But the rest were down the sideline, whether they were sort of corner routes, flat routes, out routes, or a sort of a go pattern down the sideline. And that go pattern connected for about 30 yards. I think you need to see some more of these passes being connected, of the vertical variety. And it's important to stretch a team horizontally to make them think about things. But again, this is an offense that's not built to consistently overcome their own mistakes and to consistently have drives all the way downfield that take a long time. Because again, longer drives, they're awesome to eat clock and you need them to kind of keep your defense fresh, but you can't do that all game with this offense yet. Kenny Pickett's not in Tom Brady stage of his career where he can just manage, he can just work his way down the field, get out of a pinch more often than not, and make things happen. It takes time to get to being a quarterback that can do that, even not at Tom Brady's level, because obviously he's like he's all the way up there, but to be a consistent NFL quarterback who responds in those moments. And I think that's where Kenny Pickett has to keep growing there. But I think the biggest way to help him is to give him some more one-on-one opportunities with George Pickens on some of those deep balls. Now, I'm going to show you here Pickett's receiving chart here when you look at his numbers in this game, and just explaining for at home, two of his targets came beyond the first down marker. One was a touchdown, one was the 30-yard catch that he had down the sideline, but everything else was short of the sticks. And some of them got good yards. Like he had a 9-yarder to the left, short of the sticks that got good yards. And it was a first down. He had 2 down the middle that allowed for led to 11 yards and a first down. And one to his right that led to 4 yards. But again, I don't put much on as much on Kenny for he's figuring things out right now. But if you're the Steelers offense, and again, I don't think that it's just general play calling that people should be coming after Matt Canada for. That's not the end all be all, because there are open guys. But it is clear right now that you are needing to establish an identity. The Steelers' biggest problem isn't necessarily the play calls. It's the execution. And part of the execution is understanding it and kind of like living with the play calls, being able to know, hey, and when we call this play, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. This is who I'm attacking. And the Steelers don't have that yet. They don't have their go-to plays that produce chunks or set a tone. Even like on the ground game, if you remember, like the counter trap that the Steelers would run with Le'Veon Bell, even if it only got you 5 or 6 yards, it was something that you could go to and get 5 or 6 yards, which can be really important to make up down in distance, to earn good space on second down, to get a third down that on the ground. All those types of options, you want those available. So all that being said, you want to, I think the Steelers, they want to keep their options open, but for Matt Canada, you got to find a way to get the ball to your playmakers. And I want to remind people that when you look back and look at Todd Haley's tenure with the Steelers, go back and read, if you can, some of the articles that were being written early 2013 when the Steelers were still struggling, when Antonio Brown was saying, "Throw me the effing ball," which he was saying. And people at the time just thought, oh, that kid's just crazy. Turns out they were right about that part, but they were just like, oh, he's just begging for the ball. He's just being a me guy. He's not actually going to do anything. And then it turned out he was just the best receiver in football for 6 straight years and one of the greatest receivers we've ever seen. But Todd Haley had to kind of drill it in, like, Ben, you know what? We've been training you to kind of go where the open man is, but get the ball to that guy because he's pretty doggone good and he's going to save you and win you a lot of games. I think the adjustment for Matt Canada needs to be, hey, Kenny, I know that we're saying, try to see the open field and just take what's there, but George is gonna be mossing dudes. George is going up and getting the football. He's making some plays. Let's give him some more chances. And it's gonna be up to Matt Canada to get in his face, not get in Kenny's face, but challenge Kenny. Say, hey, you know what? We're drawing up these plays. This is your guy. Now, if he's double covered, don't force it. But if he's one-on-one, we give you the green light to take the shot. And it's not just enough to say that. He's got to drill that into him. He's got to work that in all week. That has to be part of what the Steelers are doing Wednesday when they open back up practice. Thursday when they're going over the game plan one last time. Friday when they're doing walkthroughs. We're going to draw up these opportunities based off of what we saw on film. Take these shots. Give George Pickens a chance. You do that, and you turn some of those, 5, 6, 7 yard gains into 20, 30, 40-yard gains, you're going to get more points. You're going to get more opportunities, and you're going to scare defenses into who try to fly up to the ball to stop Najee Harris. And then you can truly establish balance in your offense. And I think a lot of this has to do with George Pickens. And not that you can't do this with Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson, but Pickens is showing the ability to be that guy, to be a number one wide receiver. Why not get your rookie quarterback in tandem with that guy? Develop a rapport with him. So for the next 4 years, they're both playing together. And if they start playing well together, you have a combination, a chemistry that you can bank on moving forward. And again, that's 4 years down the line. It's a long way to be. It's a long time to be there. So I think a lot of things work out in Kenny Pickett's favor if they start doing that. That's my biggest challenge to Matt Canada. It's not just the play calls, because there's open guys on plays. And I think part of the Steelers offensive scheme has been to, hey, quarterback, hit the open man, and that's reasonable. And there were plenty of reasonable calls in this game. I think the biggest problem I had was not kind of getting into situations where you're taking riskier shots downfield. But all in all, I look at these charts and these numbers, and I think, man, you might be able to simplify some things if you just hit on some of these deep passes and force defenses to honor them. You do that, I think it goes a long way to fixing what the Steelers have problems with on offense. We'll get to more in just a minute. We got my grades coming up, stars and skulls. If you're unfamiliar, we're going to go over the rubric for you. If you're familiar, it's going to be a fun one, because I think there's some grades that are going to be debatable. I'm going to get some backlash in the YouTube comment section. We'll deal with that when we get there. But first, we have to give you a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. Life is full of twists and turns, and it's important to show up for yourself through each and every one of those twists and turns. I've faced plenty of times in my life when I've tried to shoulder a lot of burdens, but found my answers thanks to the help of good therapy and good therapists who work with me, help me organize my thoughts, and better attack each and every day. This is where BetterHelp comes in, because their online therapy will assess your needs and can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. You can talk about your personal experience with BetterHelp, or when you're going to person, you can talk about them. They're going to help you work out situations that you're facing and say, hey, you know what? This is what I deal with in my day-to-day. BetterHelp is about finding better help for you. It's about finding the right therapist that can help you talk about that personal experience that you have and what's troubling you, and help you get back and stay focused on your day. And again, it's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's actual professional therapy done securely online and available to people worldwide. You can log on to your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. And with therapy, it can take a few tries to find the right fit for you. That's why BetterHelp makes it easy and free to change therapists if needed. And they have a special offer for our listeners today. Get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/LockedOn, and 10% off your first month of online therapy when you go to BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. We're also brought to you by LinkedIn. Now, y'all know about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the place that you go to when you're trying to look for your next job. Well, employers, listen up, because this one's for you. LinkedIn has LinkedIn Jobs, makes it easier for you to find the people that you want to talk to faster and for free. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs that reached out to your network and beyond, to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring, so that your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And y'all know when we do back-to-back ad reads, we keep it rolling here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into these grades, y'all, because I know that there's going to be some people that got some problems with it. And we're going to start with the bad. We're going to start with the bad this segment and then get into the good in the next segment, because I think there's going to be some interesting backlash here. We have no three scholars. I will say that, but let me go over the rubric for those who are new. I always forget we got to make sure we got to catch people up. We have our Steelers grades chart. It's different. I don't want to do A, B, C, D, E, F. It's boring. It's lame. It's been done over and over and again. This is a system that I've used before in other content that I've provided. It's just sort of like decals, like in high school football, you get a skull, you get a skulls and stars often on your helmets. Well, in this situation, skulls are bad, stars are good. If you have a 3-star day, it's an elite performance that puts you in all pro. If you string enough of those together, you're in the all pro category. 2-star performance is like great play, good day. Like you had a great play in this game. You had several other good plays. You put things together. You deserve, or a really consistent day. 1-star is kind of like, hey, you had a nice play here, and then you were like okay during the day. And in reverse, skulls, 3 skulls means you're all-time terrible. Get the heck out of here. Go sit on the bench. You don't deserve to be in the game. Bad game as a whole is 2 skulls, where like you had more than a couple bad plays and you never really step back to redeem yourself. 1 skull play is like, hey, you had a bad moment that cost the team and you really never had that moment to redeem yourself. So again, there's the rubric, but let's start with the bad. And we're going again, no 3 skulls today, so there's no all-time terribles. But I know I'm going to get some flack about this. We did have 1 2-sculler. And that was Dan Moore Jr. And I know some people were probably thinking like, wait a minute, Chris, what about Kenny Pickett? He threw 3 interceptions. We'll get to Kenny Pickett in a minute. But when I looked at Dan Moore Jr. and I was looking back over things, he was getting abused in this game. And I felt like that was a problem that kind of kept leaking out on the Steelers a little bit there. When I was going back and I was finding like he wasn't doing enough in the run game, I felt in the pass protection, he was getting whipped. There were times, and it got to the point where sometimes he'd hold his block, but because he had been whipped so much that Kenny Pickett was kind of not trusting him to hold his spot. And that's part of the chemistry. That's part of the feeling each other out, the things that will come with time. But you look at Dan Moore Jr. and he gave up 2 pressures in this game. He was getting kind of pushed back almost all the time. He allowed a QB hit. It's not the situation that you want to allow there if you're Dan Moore Jr. And I felt like he didn't have his redeeming moments. He also had a penalty that cost the Steelers. Tough situation for him. But let's go to the 1 skull guys, because I think that's where most of this discussion, this segment is going to be had. 1 skull guys. If you're listening here on the audio, there are several. We have Isaiah Loudermilk, Dan Moore Jr. Oh, I put Dan Moore Jr. here twice. I forgot to take him out from last week. So Dan Moore Jr. is a 2-sculler. Ignore the 1 skull grade here. Presley Harvin, Tyson Alualu, Zach Gentry, Chukwuma Okorafor, Arthur Mollett, Mason Cole, Chase Claypool, and Kenny Pickett. And we'll get to Kenny in a minute here, but basics over here. Loudermilk, I felt he got blown off the ball too much in this game. Presley Harvin, just wildly inconsistent still. It's getting to the point where the Steelers, maybe they should be looking at other punters in the NFL, next year, just because Presley Harvin hasn't been getting it done. There's times he can boom them, but he isn't doing it nearly enough, and I think that's becoming a concern. Tyson Alualu, I think it is just showing his age. After last year's injury, maybe that was the last bit of him being really good. I will say that he is not a terrible option, but he's just not able to win consistently enough, and you kind of saw that. But again, that's why he's a 1 skull, not a 2 skull or a 3 skull. Zach Gentry, just because he didn't really get a chance to do it as much in this game. There were only a few times he was asked to really pass protect, but when he was in there, he wasn't as effective. Nothing terrible, just like, hey, bad moment, put a skull there. Chukwuma Okorafor, I thought could have been better in this game. I thought that his pass blocking was pretty rough in this game. He gave up 3 pressures in this game, but he also, I felt like there were times that he did the right thing in run blocking. So, so I give him some credit there. Arthur Mollett in the secondary, not a terrible game. There were just a couple times I felt he got beaten. He never really made up for it, unlike the rest of his secondary, because there was some really good play around him. Mason Cole at center, another guy who gave up 3 pressures in this game. There was a couple plays where he was just getting eaten alive, and that was really concerning. You got to hope that they're able to kind of fix that moving forward. But the last 2 are players that I think everyone's interested to talk about, and that's Chase Claypool and Kenny Pickett. Chase Claypool, I felt like Chase could have done more. Yes, the trip was kind of an incidental thing, or if it wasn't incidental, it was dirty. But I don't think it was egregious. He needed to fight back in this game. I don't think he ever really took advantage of the opportunities that were in front of him, and that I feel like is why you get 1 skull, but it wasn't 2 skull. It wasn't, it wasn't that. But now here we get to where it's really interesting, because there's some people out there I'm probably thinking, like, they're probably thinking, well, Kenny Pickett 3 skull, like, he's terrible, he's a bum, get him out of here. That's not what we're saying here. Again, you go look at that pass chart, we go talk about it with people around the situation. He's doing what he can in a lot of situations. And I think that he's done a better job at moving the sticks consistently, but he has to learn how to finish. And in this game, again, the first interception, I don't blame him for. The second interception, you can partially blame him for, but you can also understand the situation. The third interception, there is no explaining. There is none of that. And that's why I gave him 1 skull, because, even with all of that working against him, even with, with that playing out, Kenny Pickett was still competitive. Kenny Pickett was still delivering the football. You go back and you look at this game again, 32 of 44 for 257 yards. Not great numbers by itself, but he at least keeps drives alive. And in this game, they won the time of possession. And I think you've now seen it with 3 games in a row with Kenny Pickett in there. The Steelers are either winning the time of possession or coming out just short of being even. And that wasn't happening in the early weeks. And that does a lot. And I know some people are probably sitting there saying, Chris, that's overplayed. Who cares? You got to put more than 10 points up. I agree with that. You do. But if you're not, if you're still messing up, if you're causing the criticism, you're welcome the criticism. I think you're putting yourself in a tough situation. I think that's where Kenny Pickett, if you're not getting those longer drives, if you're putting the defense back out there time and time again, they're going to tire out, and they can't then be the defense that gets you plays. So, it gets you opportunity. And that's what the defense was for the Bengals game. We saw them tire out and not be that for a few weeks. They kind of brought it back. And for 2 straight games, defense has been on their stuff, and it's given the offense opportunities to win games. Last week, they took advantage of it. This week, they didn't. So that's, again, why I put Kenny Pickett there. This was really close to a 2 skull grade. He did throw a touchdown pass. I say some of the interceptions are incidental. The last one doesn't look incidental at all. It's just, hey, you know what? You made a bad read. It's okay, though. Like I said before, he's a rookie. They're going to learn to roll with this guy and figure it out. But as far as the other guys go, on this list, again, I don't think anyone was egregiously bad. But I do think that there was a lot that could have been fixed up there. But there was positivity in this game. And I know that's tough for Steelers fans to accept, because when the Steelers lose, it's just doom and gloom for 5 days, and then a little bit of hope on Saturday, and then back to the grind on Sunday, when you're going to be sweating yourself out in your basement, screaming at your television, trying not to break it, or if you break it, driving to Best Buy and buying yourself a new one before the end of the 4th quarter. But I want to get to the good place before, because in the next segment, because the stars, I think, are an interesting conversation as far as who earned the stars, what kind of stars, and what is helping the Steelers in those moments. We'll do that in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys at PrizePicks. Now, PrizePicks, of course, is daily fantasy made easy. It's a new fantasy game that's sweeping across the country. And if you're into fantasy sports, this is a way to get your daily fix, because all PrizePicks is asking you to do is just pick more or less on your favorite athletes. To put money down in PrizePicks and win money, you just got to pick 2 to 5 players that you think you have a beat on for their day in fantasy. Then go to PrizePicks and see, okay, what's the number that they're giving a more or less on. For example, if you had George Pickens for Sunday night, having more than, if it said, George Pickens, will he record 50 or 55 more or less yards? If you bet the more, you won part of that parlay bet. So that's where this becomes a lot more fun. Go to PrizePicks, because they have NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, and more. And you can download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can use a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On. Remember, get your $100 instant deposit match when you go to prizepicks.com, and you'll be able to play and win some money. Again, you're not playing against everyone else. You're playing against the house. It's that simple. It's that easy. Go get yourself some PrizePicks, because it's definitely going to give you a chance to win some money. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. Let's round out this show. We'll talk some positivity because I do think there was a lot to grow from now. 1-star grades, there were quite a few because there were guys who I felt like didn't do everything that they could have done, but they had some really good moments. And if they're for offensive guys, if they got more of those moments, I think that would have been defining in this game. But defensively, there's a lot of guys here too. I put pretty much a lot of the secondary in this one star category. Terrell Edmunds, Cam Sutton, Trey Norwood, all making it here. You'll see Minkah Fitzpatrick in a bit. But, I look at these guys here, and Terrell Edmunds, I mean, in this game, he was tasked with kind of helping take away the deep ball. And he did. He had a breakup in this game that I thought was really important. You look at Terrell Edmunds in this game. He was targeted 4 times. None of those 4 times he was targeted resulted in a reception. That's pretty doggone good. He also had a stop, and he's been taking steps forward. I said before, I think Terrell Edmunds is a piece that you got to keep around for a long time to pair with Minkah Fitzpatrick. Cam Sutton, even though he dropped that interception, only targeted 1 time on the night, and that 1 time was the dropped interception. I'd say that means he did a pretty good job. Trey Norwood, an undersung part of this game, I thought that he did a really good job in staying in position. A lot of why the Dolphins couldn't move the ball at nearly as much as the game went out. The Steelers made adjustments. They cut guys off. They were passing guys off. They were playing zone, playing man, trying to confuse people, and it worked. Trey Norwood was part of that. He had 2 important tackles for stops in key situations. So I put him in the star list for that. But let's get to the other guys too, because we talked a lot about those secondary guys. I say both the running backs, Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, did what they could with what was available to them. And we were saying that here about these guys. And again, I'm going over these numbers, and I know people are probably thinking like, Chris, like, come on, man, Najee Harris isn't playing at this great level. I say to you, there's other examples. There's other examples of running backs struggling like this, and it's really funny because Andrew Filipponi, who's a great radio personality in Pittsburgh on 93.7 The Fan, check his show out every day. But he tweeted out something on Monday night saying Najee Harris has gone 9 straight games without 100 yards. And he says that he's like, injuries, game script, offensive coordinator, offensive line, quarterback. I don't care. That's way too long for a supposed star running back to go without having a big game. And so I was like, yeah, 9 games. That's way too long for a supposed superstar running back to go without 100 yards rushing performance, regardless of circumstance. And I mean, look at these numbers. He'll never be that. And I posted 9 straight games of starting running back play where you had 10 carries for 26 yards, 18 carries for 56 yards, 18 carries for 57, 8 for 24, 11 for 56, 7 for 21, 12 for 33, 6 for 27, 11 for 58. None of those are great star running back numbers. Problem was they weren't Najee Harris's numbers. They were Derrick Henry's from 2018, back when people were saying he was a bust. You know what the difference was then? That the Tennessee Titans offense was still trying to find an identity. They needed to establish some balance because teams were flying to the line of scrimmage. They said, we are not going to allow Derrick Henry to beat us. And it wasn't until Ryan Tannehill came in, and even just Ryan Tannehill, who wasn't great or anything, he just came in and was doing his job and taking what was there. And when he came in and he started hitting A.J. Brown and hitting guys down the line, then it was like, oh, snap, we have to pay attention to multiple things. And then Derrick Henry became Derrick Henry. And if you're sitting there saying, well, Chris, 2018, he was a rookie. No, that was his 3rd year in the league. He had plenty of experience, more experience than what Najee Harris has right now. So maybe chill with the Najee Harris stinks narrative. I think I've talked to a lot of people. I've talked to Mike DeFabo of The Athletic, Josh Taylor of 93.7 The Fan, KDK TV. I've talked to Jenna Harner. I've talked to Brooke Pry. I've talked to a lot of people about Najee Harris. Najee Harris's lack of production in the Steelers ain't about just him. It's not just, oh, he's not in the hole. He's bad. He's not good. If you put in Jaylen Warren, he's a superstar. I've talked to Arthur Moats, Wes Euler, anybody I've talked to about this, that I'd say the overwhelming majority of the people who actually study this stuff agree. This ain't just about Najee Harris. And the people that are saying it are the people that A, don't watch that much film, or B, they watch some film and they don't watch close enough, or they're trying to really force a narrative there. But again, I point back to Derrick Henry because he's another. It's funny. He's an Alabama running back who was a superstar in college, coming out, had a lot of high respect for him, and people were starting to say, maybe he wasn't that good. And then he turns out he's like one of the best running backs in the league, if not the best running back in the league for some time. But anyways, back to the 1-star grades. I know I went into a bit of a tangent there, but I had to get that out because I was just like, this is just a little much here. We're saying here. I also gave a star to Jaylen Warren because his pass protection is really solid in this game. When you look at what he does, I think there's little things here and there that he does the little things right. And that's why Eddie Faulkner told me, and we said it right. We showed the interview right on this show back in August. You can go back and look for it if you want. But Eddie Faulkner said right on the show, like, hey, Jaylen Warren, we thought he was the 6th best running back of this class, and we said he might fall to be undrafted. He was. As soon as he was, we called him up, brought him in, and he's been everything and more that we thought he would be. And I think that he's a good 1-2 punch with Najee Harris. But the reason he's getting the charge forward is because no one's looking for him the way they are looking for Najee Harris. And I guarantee you that if Jaylen Warren becomes the star back and he gets a couple good runs, teams are going to key on him just like they key on Najee Harris. And then you won't see him charging forward because he's going to be busy dodging 3 people in the backfield. Best way to make all that go away, hit those deep shots down the field, which is what the whole point of my first segment of this show was about. And get it to your playmakers like George Pickens, who's doing a really good job at doing it. Other guys who were 1-stars in this game, Pat Freiermuth. I mean, he didn't have the chance to make the super explosive play that was ridiculous, but he came through when needed. 8 catches on 9 targets for 75 yards, especially late when you got a chance there. I thought James Pierre in this game, when you look back at the overall performance that he had, he played 14 plays in coverage, was targeted 2 times, allowed 1 catch for 9 yards. That's pretty decent. The only reason I didn't put Levi Wallace in here, but he didn't get a skull because he wasn't victimized too much, but he did allow 5 of 8 receptions for 86 yards. Not great, but not terrible. So that's why he's neutral. He doesn't get a star or a skull. He's pretty much the only guy in the secondary that kind of ranked that way. Again, Trey Norwood had 2 good tackles in this game. Undersung for what he did, was consistently in position over the middle to help things out. Other guys on this list that made 1 star, Chris Boswell, because he made his field goal. And I thank those who remind me to put specialists on here, because I forget to put specialists on here sometimes. I'm so scrimmage based because I'm looking at tape, and I don't study tape on kickers and punters. I just kind of look at what they do. But thank you for reminding me I got to put those guys on there. So there they are. Last guys, trenches guys, Kevin Dotson. I want to say this about Kevin Dotson. I called him out. He had a 3-skull game against the Buccaneers. Even in the Steelers win, he was making mistakes. He was making mental mistakes. He was holding. He was causing penalties. He was getting whipped at the line. All that stopped in this game. And I didn't realize it live as much because I was paying attention to so many other things. When I was watching him, I was like, ooh. He just kept hitting people and pushing them off the line and changing the line of scrimmage. Kudos to Kevin Dotson. He shut me up with that one. And I think that he's showing some real improvement there. You just got to see it continue to improve. The last guy there, also Larry Ogunjobi, he changed the line of scrimmage as well. Him and Cam Heyward to continue to grow. That being said, those are your 1-star guys. Let's go over the 2-star guys, because I think they're the ones that I thought really showed up. I'm going to start with George Pickens. Again, it'd be a 1-star if it was just a touchdown grab that was absolutely ridiculous, but also the deep down the sideline grabs. Anytime they've thrown him the ball, he was perfect on the day. He came down with it. I give him a 2 stars for that. But other guys you got to consider here, we throw in Minkah Fitzpatrick. Why? Well, because Minkah Fitzpatrick was just all over the doggone place. 4 tackles, 1 recorded stop. He was not targeted once in this game, and he played 37 snaps in coverage. The Tua Tagovailoa, for as much deep passing as he does, he never threw it in the direction of Minkah Fitzpatrick. The one time that the ball bounced off of Minkah Fitzpatrick's hands, it was because Cam Sutton dropped the pick and it bounced off of him and Minkah Fitzpatrick was going to blow up the play and didn't see the ball bounce in time. But that's why he's elite. He's all over the field. He's really helping take away those deep passes. And he forced, hey, Tua Tagovailoa, if you're going to gain big yards, it's going to be over the middle underneath me. but not going deep down the sidelines and things like that. So Minkah Fitzpatrick, 2-star performance. If he had a pick, that would have made it like a 3-star day because he otherwise was elite. Cam Heyward, I mean, he's Cam Heyward. What else are we going to say? He changes the line of scrimmage consistently. 4 tackles by himself, 1 assist, had 3 official stops according to PFF. Just gets the job done. Needed more of a pass rush in this game. That's why Alex Highsmith and none of the other guys are here. But Cam Heyward, when it came to stuff in the run, he was setting the tone and clearing out space for other guys, as did Larry Ogunjobi. But the guys that they were clearing out space for, these are 2 guys getting 2 stars here. Both it's Myles Jack and Devin Bush. I truly think these guys are figuring it out. And I said it all off season. If you were watching the Locked On Steelers podcast during training camp, and I was watching these guys, I'm like, these guys can put it together. They're 2 athletic guys. They can be physical, and all they got to do is learn how to work together and learn how to feed off the defensive line. And the defensive line could be better than it was last year, which right now it's starting to be. Those guys are going to feed off that. They're going to charge back there. They're going to make some tackles in the backfield. They're going to make some plays. And in this game, Myles Jack led the Steelers with 10 tackles. Devin Bush right behind was next with 6. One of those tackles was for loss. They were really helping contain the run game. They said, hey, Dolphins, you're not going to run out the clock on us. You're not going to just get easy plays either. No, you're going to have to work for this. And Myles Jack was decent in coverage. He wasn't like overly great or anything. When I looked at his numbers, I believe he allowed 5 catches on 6 targets, but only for 45 yards. And and like I look at that and I'm thinking like, you know what, that's not all that bad. And there were a couple of those plays where he was able to get a tackle short of the sticks and stop the Dolphins from doing it. And there was one especially on the drive where the Steelers got the 4th down stop. He was able to stop, I think it was Mike Gesicki short of the sticks, and that forced, I think, a 3rd short, which then they won. And then, of course, the Dolphins went out there for 4th down, and they got stuffed. But I got to say with Devin Bush, too, and this is what I said all last year. And I wasn't saying that Devin Bush was an all-pro and all this other stuff. I just said, hey, I think he's better than when he looks in 2021. I was saying that all last year. Again, you can go back to all the shows, and I said, hey, Devin Bush, he's playing rough, but I think that part of this is his injury. I think part of this, the situation with the defensive line's getting blown up, and it's just all a perfect storm of bad things to make him look lesser than he is. But this year, not the best defensive line in the world, but a good defensive line, a better defensive line this year. And he's not playing, he's further removed from that ACL, MCL injury that he had in his 2nd year. And all of a sudden he's flying around the field. He's doing the things that I think the Steelers have struggled with. There was a pass that Tua Tagovailoa went right after him. It was Tyreek Hill. It was the dreaded wide receiver matched up with a linebacker matchup. Ran with him step for step, broke up the play. Second week in a row with a big breakup because, remember, he broke up the 2-point conversion that Tom Brady threw to Chris Godwin. That's why they drafted him. Because they needed an athletic linebacker. And for years, after Ryan Shazier got hurt, they didn't have one. And teams were just picking him apart in the middle part of the field because they were just like, you don't have the athletic linebackers. You went and got John Bostic. You had, got slower guys that just weren't able to do that kind of stuff. And, each year in the draft, they tried to go find those guys. They'd go off in the 1st round before the Steelers could go get him. That's why they traded up to get Devin Bush. And in the rookie year, it looked like he was worth it. In the 2nd year, looked like he was worth it until he got hurt. 3rd year, looked like a bust. But I said, hey, apply context. Let's see how he plays in his 4th year. In 4th year, this don't look like bust territory. This looked like a good off-ball linebacker. And he still has room to improve. I think he still needs to be more of a playmaker that, get some turnovers going. But he's stepping up. He's making plays. And Mike Tomlin, anytime we criticized Devin Bush or said, or even acknowledged that he was improving, like talking about him as if like, oh, Mike, aren't you happy Bush is playing better? Mike Tomlin would be like, listen, y'all were pushing that narrative that Devin was in such a need and so bad last year. We were not. We knew exactly what was going on with him. And, again, that speaks to, I think, the Steelers knowing, hey, we don't got to rush the situation. And they didn't allow that to say, hey, we're going to sign him to a big contract. Otherwise, they say, hey, Devin, we understand that you're going to this situation. We can't pay you the 5th-year option until we see that you overcome it, but we're going to give you that chance. And I think that Devin Bush, the way he's playing, it might be a situation where the Steelers can say, hey, you know what, Devin, we'll give you a sort of Terrell Edmonds type of contract. Like, hey, go test the market. Let's see if you get paid. If you don't, You have a system right here where you're going to work with Brian Flores and Mike Tomlin and Myles Jack and Cam Heyward and TJ Watt and Alex Hyde. Like, don't you want to be in part of that defense? Maybe you get it there, and maybe not. Maybe you go get Tremaine Edmonds because it looks like his contract might be up in Buffalo or some situation like that. Maybe you go draft a guy. I don't know. But Devin Bush right now playing good football, as are other guys on this 2-star list. Again, you had Myles Jack, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Heyward, and George Pickens. So there are all our grades. No 3 stars, no 3 skulls this game. But we hope that you enjoyed our grade segment. We like to have a little bit of fun with that. Let me know. I'm Chris Carter at Carter Critiques on Twitter and Instagram. Let me know if you disagree with any of my grades. If you thought that Kenny Pickett was graded too low, too high, whatever, or any of the players. Always happy to chat with you guys. Be respectful. If you're disrespectful, you get muted, and I just never see or hear your face again. Always appreciate feedback and people letting me know what they think about the show. Thanks again for checking out the Locked On Steelers podcast. Remember, you can go on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, anywhere podcasts are hosted to go check out this show. And if you're seeing this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, and you see all the updates coming up here. If you want to help out the show even further, go on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment. You do both at the same time, and you can leave us a shout out, and you get a shout out at the end of the show. And we do have a shout out this time, and it's been a minute. I do admit I apologize. I wasn't doing the shout outs for a bit because we were just kind of overloaded with content. But we got some recent ones that I wanted to acknowledge, and I wanted to thank the people that do this stuff because it does really help us out. Our latest 5-star review comes from CP21, who says, best Steelers pod, 5 stars. Chris does great work, awesome analysis, and a great set of podcast guests to help. Great balance of optimism and realism. Always helps you feel a little bit better after the losses. And CP, there's been a lot of those this year. They're 2-5. So hope that you guys enjoy the show like CP does. If you want to help us out, give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts with the positive comments to get your shout out. Thanks again, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Again, your host, Chris Carter. We'll see you guys very soon.